Hello viewers, my name is Javon Wilson coming to you live from the beautiful British Virgin Islands out of 284 Media. Now the BVI is now poised for a full reopening as it relates to the tourism industry come December 1st following an almost 6 to 7 months closure as it relates to the international tourists. But while we ready ourselves, there are so many other issues to be addressed within the territory. One of the things we're looking at is the health protocols for tourists as well as the returning residents, unemployment and business relief, when we will be able to return to a full internal reopening, and our readiness as it relates to the health capacity to handle any possible case as a result of us opening to the international market. Viewers, these are just a few of the topics we intend to cover today with our very special guest, the one and only Territory Leader and Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew A. Foy, who is live with us in studio. Again, my name is Javon Wilson, inviting you to stick with us for more after this very short commercial break.
The win! Oh!
What are the hell?
I'm freaking out!
Is time.
284 News.
Coming to you live and direct from the beautiful British Virgin Islands.
What's poppin', what's really good, what's happening, what's up?
Davis has won it for the Lakers!
Viewers, as promised, we have the man of the hour, our very own Premier Foy, leading the charge for recovery and development as we continue to champion our way through this pandemic. Premier Foy, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to 284 Media.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and I say God's blessings to all of you in 284 Media and all the listening audience. And I just want to say that I thank the people of the Virgin Islands for their patience, and it's just a pleasure to be here to discuss the issues of the territory and the way forward, because we continue to thrive together and strive together in the midst of COVID-19. So thank God for all that He is able to help us to do, to be right now down to 0 confirmed cases, active cases of COVID-19. So we have a lot to thank God for, but we still have a lot to do. So I'm glad that we're here to talk.
And indeed, we are grateful. Now, Premier Foy, let's begin with you. How are you doing? Because I know in this time, these perilous times, it must be a really difficult task to lead, especially in light of everything that has happened over the last few months. So tell us, how have you been coping and staying above the water in these times?
Well, I often tell my wife, my children, and also my colleagues that have graciously allowed me to lead them, that I've learned over the years in leadership roles to always stay goal-oriented and stay positive, and to be mindful that you can't solve everything, but you try as much to be. You'll never be perfect, but you always try to stay on the road of perfection. But the most important one that keeps me level-headed is never get too high with the highs and never get too low with the lows. Just continue to flow in the middle of it and fulfill the purpose God placed you in order to fulfill. And once you stay focused on those principles and keep in step with God, then everything else you'll be able to handle along the way.
Excellent. So you're well positioned, Premier Foy. Now, like you said initially, we now have 0 cases of coronavirus in the territory. And of course, we know we've worked collectively and feverishly as it relates to the health authorities, the government, and as well as the people who are in compliance, making sure that they adhere to the rules. But we've worked really hard to get those numbers down. But in light of the fact that we are now down to 0 as it relates to active cases, why do we still have a curfew as it relates to restrictions and so on?
Well, first of all, every decision that we make is not just made based on just the economic side. It's also made based on the health side. And we gradually graduated the curfew time more and more. But I want to say clearly, rather than me focusing on that aspect of it, I want to say that before we got this spike, we were preaching very heavily for us to adhere to all the social measures that have been implemented by government, being it that the 6 feet, the wearing a mask, and many other measures that have been put in place. And I must say that as a government, we are not happy by the volume of persons that were adhering to it. There were some, and a large population of the population was doing so, but not enough, because we cannot shut down this territory every time there's a case, and we have to learn to live and walk through COVID-19. So a lot of publicity and education has been done. Now, this spike was very difficult for us. It happened in a time when we thought that we were making strides, but I must say, it is the most positive, negative thing that happened to us to put us in a more positive direction, because now more persons and businesses understand that in order for us to have our economy moving to the next level, in order for us to live and combat COVID-19, we have to stay steadfast in purpose and diligent in actions by adhering to all the social protocols. That allowed us to put in the social distancing task force that are giving fines now to anyone who is not wearing a mask in the public domain and in the areas specified by government, and for businesses. It is not that you want persons to learn by pain, but you want persons to learn that in order for us to combat COVID-19, is going to take each of us, each business, each person, with BVI love, moving in a direction that respects the measures so that we can avoid any possible community spread again of COVID-19 in the event, God forbid, that there's a case that we won't have to shut down because it will be properly contained. So anyone who is out there today under the sound of my voice, please hold yourself accountable, hold me accountable, hold my ministers, the government accountable, hold your family accountable, hold the businesses accountable. If you go into a business place and they're not practicing the correct social measures, well, then alert them so that they can make the adjustments. And if they do, then walk back out, because the life you save might be yours, it might be your mother, it might be your child, it might be your grandmother or whoever. So at the end of the day, we have a lot that we have learned from this latest negative case. So we have graduated the curfew from 5 p.m. and we graduated to 8 p.m. and now we have graduated to midnight. And we want to make sure that we do some more monitoring. And then after that, the health team will let us know, and then we will eventually take it off. So it is up to us as a people now to make sure that we adhere to these measures. Already we have seen in the media where certain businesses had to be closed because they were not adhering to the social measures. If we're going to move to graduate this now, where we remove the curfew, we have to adhere to these measures and show that we're responsible. Although most of us are, it's going to take all of us to do this, because it only takes one case of COVID-19 to be able to pose a threat to our economy and to our safety.
So you're saying that if persons within the community, businesses alike, if everyone was to abide by the rules, and recently out to the media as well, we did hear law enforcement saying that for the most part, we have been complying with those rules. Based on what you just said, if we are to do exactly what we need to do, then we can expect a complete full reopening even before December 1st?
For sure, we want to get there before December 1st, because if we're opening, which we are on December 1st, we have to now first show to the world and show to ourselves and prove to ourselves that we can live and walk through COVID-19. It is not doing this for December 1st, it's doing this because this is the new regular of how things will operate in the BVI and in the world for COVID-19. So we have to police ourselves and do not have anyone else police us. Once we police ourselves with the social measures as individuals and businesses, we will see the curfew lifted altogether off of the territory.
All right. Some persons, ever since the news was announced that we now have a 12 a.m. curfew, have been pushing for schools to reopen. Is that something the government of the Virgin Islands, and by default the cabinet, is willing to consider at this point?
100%. The Minister of Education this week and up to yesterday night had a meeting with the Financial Secretary. We're making sure that we get all the necessary funds put together to make sure the schools, those schools that are still need certain attention, receive those attention in terms of making sure that the hand basins for them to wash their hands, also to ensure that there are other measures and resources put in place to deal with the COVID-19 situation in the schools. So we're working feverishly on that, and the schools cabinet will pass next week that the schools should be opening. I don't want to steal their thunder, but to alleviate some of the fears, the answer is yes, we're working feverishly towards it. And that announcement, officially when it will be and how it will be, cabinet should be making that next week. So I don't want to preempt what all that cabinet would pass, but that is in the pipeline.
Well, that is some good news. I know some of our viewers are smiling at this point. Honorable Foy, as we take a deeper look at the tourism industry, we are so blessed when we think about the British Virgin Islands, notably to be living in one of the most beautiful saddle destinations in the world, without a doubt. And we have done a really, really great job at selling tourism. But a lot of that, as we know, has been compromised with COVID-19. Now, following months of uncertainty, we now have a date and we also have a fully rebranded tourism product, but persons are now worried about protocols. I'm sure you've been hearing about this. We need the protocols, we need the plans. So come December 1st, will our tourists be subjected to quarantine requirements? And if yes, how long will that be for?
Well, first of all, I want to answer clearly. The plans were always there over the whole period of COVID-19. The HEOC, the Health Emergency Operating Center, worked with each segment of government to make sure that plans were put in place. So the Tourist Board already had the plans in place, and the latest spike calls for a review of those plans. And I must say in a manner that will strengthen them. So the stakeholders have always been spoken to, but now we are doing it even more in a more aggressive manner with the new revised plans since this last spike. And we're looking about how we can make sure that everyone has a buy-in into the plans as much as possible. I must say, though, that there's a balance that we are trying to seek between the safety of the territory with the economy. It's not an easy balance. And with that in mind, a lot of work is being put in place with that. One of the preliminary areas that health has informed was that we need to look at a 4-day curfew a 4-day quarantine for persons coming into the territory.
You said this was recommended by environmental health?
And by the health team with a 4-day.
Okay.
So that was one of the areas that we brought out for discussions. Since then, persons have expressed their concerns. And the health team, given the open-mindedness they're trying to see what else can be done since persons have emailed their comments, their concerns, and persons who have participated in the meetings and the different stakeholders, industry meetings with the Tourist Board and the Junior Minister of Tourism, Honorable Sherry De Castro, and the Chair and the Managing Director for Tourist Board, and all the Tourist Board staff, and appears from the Premier's office. They have been feverishly meeting with a lot of the industry. So we've been listening to the people. Or we have stated to everyone that the draft plans that we have bring to them for discussion is not finalized. And even if we go to the cabinet and we said these are the protocols, and wisdom comes to us in areas that we need to adjust because we must adjust. COVID-19 is not static. It's a fluid situation. And I want to state to persons that this is not a situation where we can have textbook plans. These are plans that have to deal with the reality on the ground. And that is why we are continually massaging the plans to deal with the reality on the ground. So with this in mind, those are some of the recommendations that came out initially, but many meetings since then with the stakeholders, with different part of our sectors of our economy have allowed us to start a review with health. And even coming this weekend, we have some more meetings with health and other stakeholders so that we can review and see if we can find common ground on what will be a more amicable way forward. Right now, I want to say that I congratulate our health team for what they're doing. It's not a simple thing to try to make sure that we remain COVID-free, because remember, although some persons are pushing to go no quarantine, we have to be mindful that if there is any breakout, those same persons are the ones going to blame the government for not being prudent about the way they have done things. So we have to make sure that we listen to everything that people say, take the areas that we can value add, and make sure we come up with the best product. So it's not finalized, but it is a trend of thought that some kind of quarantine would be needed, whether it be 1 day, 2 days, 3 or 4 days. That now has still left to be determined since the last discussions we're having this week. We have gone under reconsideration, which is what a government should be about, listening to the voice of the people without compromising our health. I might add that.
All right, Premier, are you worried about us possibly losing out on business? You did mention it may not be a 4-day quarantine, maybe 1, 2, 3 days, but considering the fact that the USVI is right next door, direct competitors as relates to tourism, we're very closely knitted with the USVI, and they're basically quarantine free at this point, once persons can provide a negative test upon arrival. How do you feel about that and those concerns very specifically?
Well, I applaud anything that works for any country right now with COVID-19 because no one has the textbook on this. No one has written a textbook before on this. And at the end of the day, as a leader, we look at everything that works all around us and we try to incorporate that. We look at the best practices around the world, but remember, best practices might not be the best thing for us here in the BVI. But we have to check and see what's best for the BVI. With COVID-19, you have to calculate what risk you can manage. And here in the BVI, we only have 8 ventilators. And we are trying to find what risks we can manage best by reopening our tourism industry and ensuring the safety of the people of the Virgin Islands who were here all the time for this COVID-19 pandemic that's ongoing, and the safety of our visitors when they come in. So I'm not going to say that I will look over at the USVI and say, well, all right, we will do that, or we look over at St. Kitts, or we will do that. I applaud them for whatever they're trying, because that is what all of us are doing, trying to find that niche area, that balance for us based on what risk we can manage. And I am confident that the BVI will find that niche area because we are doing what needs to be done. We are keeping the conversations going. The health team is involved, and we are making sure that we look at all modern practices that the BVI can incorporate. So I know before it's said and done, we'll find that balance that the BVI is looking for, because COVID-19 is fluid. What worked yesterday wouldn't work today. So we have to continue to make sure that we look for that niche balance for us in this new era of COVID-19 with our tourism product.
All right, Honorable Premier, I know just like the 4-day quarantine, there was some talk about testing prior to arrival, testing upon arrival, and then testing once that quarantine period would have been concluded. Were you able to finalize anything further as it relates to the testing requirements? And also, what happens if, for example, a tourist exhibits any symptom of COVID-19 or even test positive locally? Will that person need to return to wherever they're traveling from, or is it a situation where they'll be treated locally?
Well, they're already here. So that's what I mean and in terms of adopting the best practice for us to manage the risk. And one of the areas is that persons would have to have a COVID-19 test before they enter into the BVI. As a matter of fact, one of the areas that we are working on, and the full details will very soon be placed in the public domain, but we are discussing with all the stakeholders and others as we go along. One of the areas we're doing is that you have to actually download an app to when you decide that you want to visit the BVI. And there are certain information you have to put into that app, and they have to be verified by the Ministry of Health. And one of those is to make sure that you do have a COVID-19 test and that the test is negative. And also when you reach their discussions on whether the test will be upon arrival or in terms of the quarantine and after that short quarantine area. So those are the areas that are being fine-tuned right now. And those areas are being reconsidered because of the latest technologies that are out there that seems to be more reliable, that is causing us to take a second look and make a shift. But I want to say that we continue to develop our capacity to handle COVID-19, because remember before now, for us returning home originally, it was 14 days. So this will also allow us to be able to reduce the time frame for the quarantine, given all the measures that will be put in place. So that area of when you arrive, when the next test would be, is one of the areas that within the next few days, speaking and discussing with the industry, we'll be able to fine-tune.
All right, so all that is regarding our incoming tourists come December 1st. What about the requirements for nationals, permit holders, or any persons within the territory or living overseas or trapped overseas at this point? is the conditions going to be the same? Because as we speak, we are currently mandated, like you said, to a 2-week quarantine period. And of course, testing if we travel, sorry. But will that be relaxed for persons who reside in the territory or frequent the territory before December 1st?
Well, relax in terms of looking at shrinking the number of days for the quarantine to see if the both of them could be aligned with the visitors and the persons coming back. Because remember, we are ongoing with that. We have our nationals returning, persons who work permit returning. We all have all of that going on right now. That is up to the 14 days. So all of that is in discussion now on how do we move about with the health team is now discussing how do we shrink that based on the latest technology that's available, that's reliable and valid.
And what about persons who want to travel out? Say, for example, I have family in Miami. I have siblings in Miami. Premier, certainly I do not have 3 weeks as we speak right now to, of course, the quarantine. Again, for persons who are traveling out, persons who want to leave, is there any considerations being given for those persons specifically, and especially before that December 1st date?
Well, persons are leaving and coming back all the time. So that's already happening.
But they're subjected to the 2-week mandatory
as
quarantine.
of right now until that changes.
Okay.
But I want to make something abundantly clear to everyone, and I know some persons know it and most persons know it. Even when you reopen on December 1st, or wherever you live and persons reopen for visitors, etc., life will not be the same. Some persons are on the mindset that they could get on a plane, go to Miami today, return today. There's a lot of protocols that are going to be in place, not just for the BVI, but even when you leave the BVI, some other countries have protocols in place that before you enter into their territory, you have to have a COVID-19 test, and it has to be a negative test, sorry. So there are other countries with these stipulations. So we're not alone in this. If you look at the protocols for different countries, there are different criterions that they're asking for. So life is going to change, travel is going to change in this COVID-19 era, because this is a new regular of living and working and traveling with COVID-19, and that's just the reality of it. It's not just the BVI.
Absolutely. Premier, most recently, the government would have publicized its commitment to meeting the UK's deadline by 2023 as it relates to these publicly accessible registers. Now, we had an initial deadline of 2020, but that, of course, was extended. We can all remember the historic protest in the BVI that led to that. But also, back in March 2019, you said very specifically that the government's focus was to convince Britain that the BOSS system, which we've implemented, is a much better alternative to these public registers. That was implemented. We know for sure it was given really great reviews by the international law enforcers. And even the governor recently, when did we transition from essentially trying to avoid signing on to those registers because, of course, we understand the risk to now committing to working with the UK on the registers?
Well, let me make something abundantly clear. I have not spoken much on this publicly other than the House of Assembly, but in no way did I say that we signed on to anything. We agreed to work on a framework for publicly accessible registers. We never signed on to public registers. The match that you refer to rightfully was because that is what was being told to us by the United Kingdom, that we have to move towards public registers. And it was a match against that. And anything that causes our political advancement in our constitution to be retarded, that will require actions like what we saw. We stated clearly that we met when we came into office that some decision had to be made. I agree fully that the BOSS system covered that. But there was still a push by the United Kingdom, and also a statement of where they clearly stated that if something is not done by each overseas territory, they were going to implement through imperial legislation on us those public registers. We were faced with a situation where, do we allow persons to bring the future to us, or do we prepare our people and the industry for the future, thereby we having a hand in crafting the framework that the financial services will operate from? And we stated clearly that we are willing to move towards working with the framework, building that framework for publicly accessible registers, which means that the framework that we are building is to ensure that you do not just have a field day in person's account. There has to be probable cause. If I'm going to, as a law enforcement, search your house, I have to go and get from the courts the search warrant, and I have to take to them probable cause. We know that here will not be the home to money launderers. It will not be the home to those who are financing terrorist financing. It will not be the home to those who are evading taxes or tax evaders. But we also know that there are a lot of very good standing persons that have businesses and companies in the Virgin Islands. And we want to protect those because the beneficial owner of those businesses may very well be one of their 6-year-old son. And you do not want persons just looking through registers on a witch hunt on a field day so that they will look and see that and God forbid that gets out and someone goes and does something negative, whether it be kidnap or whatever the case may be, because you don't know. That young child and extort the persons for money. We want to make sure that the rule of law is adhered to. We want to make sure that there's protection for children. We want to make sure there's protection for the vulnerable and certain areas. So we want to be the framers of this framework that will govern how the publicly accessible registers will perform. And I need to say this here to you while I'm here in the interview. We have had many sessions with the industry. And the industry has also stated to me their concerns and also their input on what needs to be done. May I add that most of the industry did agree that something had to be done. And how do we do it in a way where we can have a hand in framing it? So we had consultations with the industry. Some of them brought me papers to tell me that this is the way that they would prefer. Our BVI Finance Center has also been meeting with the industry steadily for months, for years. And this is an area that we had to make a decision one way or the other. And the decision that this government made is very simple after speaking with the industry. We're going to go in a direction where we can have a hand and control our destiny by being part of the framers of this framework that will govern publicly accessible registers. So that is what the government has done in this area.
Well said, Premier. As it relates to negotiating, because you did say you want to ensure that we have a strong hand in this, but when we think about the very strong stance the UK has taken as it relates to publicly accessible registers, not only with us, but all the other British overseas territories, are you confident that we can negotiate well in this process?
We can do anything we set our minds to do. And one of the things we have to understand that once God is with us, we cannot have fear. We're going to move respectfully, but not fearfully. I want to explain to the public why I move in the way I move. And I brought today, and just to hold it up, the Constitution of the Virgin Islands. And under the UN Charter, Article 73 of the UN Charter, it states clearly that after the abolition of slavery and even into colonization and coming out of colonization, the United Kingdom has been given the mandate by the United Nations to make sure that all colonized OTs, etc., have to be decolonized, which means self-determination is in our future, whether we want to hear it or not, whether we want to accept it or not, whether we want to believe me or not. Just read Article 73 of the United Nations. It does not have to be now, but every time we move with a constitutional review, everything we do in our country now has to show that we can police ourselves, has to show that we can renegotiate or negotiate things in the best interest of the people of the Virgin Islands. When I became the Premier, we had to renegotiate areas of the CDB loan. And I was told that there is no way that we can do it. We renegotiated the CDB loan, and we have seen now our contractors through the RDA are able to get contracts as local contractors. We cannot determine as a government which local contractor will get it, but through our negotiations, we ensured that to a high ceiling amount that our contractors through the CDB loan are the ones who are going to be allowed to bid on these jobs and are the ones that are going to be considered and awarded these jobs. That's when you're negotiating for your people of the Virgin Islands without fear. We also went back to the United Nations and renegotiated for us to be considered for business stimulus grants, which we received, and other areas because of our GDP that we were not being qualified for, that we are now being considered for funding in the COVID-19 area. We went as a government and negotiated with the Social Security Board to get a grant to help the people of the Virgin Islands to be able to give the stimulus that we are giving out now in business, the daycare, the fishing, and you name it, and we have done that. And we were told, one, that it could not happen. Two, there's no way we could get a $40 million grant. We were told that it's going to dry the Social Security scheme, and we saw the actuary studies stated that it will not dry Social Security. We are coming to a maturity process in the BVI, and we have to understand that the Constitution gives us a lot of authority and rights as the people of the Virgin Islands. We do not operate like we used to. And a lot of persons just casually read the Constitution. First of all, I know that we can negotiate this safely. We haven't said all of that because no one can, in law, frame any document that does not adhere to the rule of law. Absolutely. And with the rule of law, it will make sure that certain human rights are adhered to, and certain rights including privacy, including the right of the child, including the vulnerable, and including many other areas. So once we stick to the Constitution and we know who we are as a people with negotiation, and we have the right team negotiating, we will get it done.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Honorable Premier. Now, following the closure of the borders in March, one of the things we saw government doing was government amended the law to extend the temporary layoff period to October 31st. And when we think about that date, that is a mere 3 weeks from now. As we speak, businesses are now trying to figure out whether to retain their staff or to pay severance. And I know paying severance in this time, I'm sure you can agree, it's going to be very challenging, especially in light of the fact that there has been little to no money really circulating in the last 6 months. So now that we have a scheduled relaunch as it relates to the date to reopen the territory, will the temporary termination deadline be extended as well to December 1st? Or at least what are some of the plans we're looking for, some of the considerations regarding that?
The businesses have made their representation to the Minister of Labor and to myself, and we have had some meetings this week on it. And then hopefully by next week, the Minister of Labor will be able to make some statements. I think that will be in the best interest of all.
Okay, what if, I guess you said the minister will speak on that. I was going to do a follow-up about persons possibly severing staff and bringing them back, just releasing them for a few days and then bringing them back for another 3 months. Do you think that would be considered as well?
Well, I'll put it this way. This government is here for the people. We've all been here for the people, especially small businesses. Over the years, that's a track record of the Virgin Islands Party government. And we believe that the voice of the people is the voice of God, so we listen. So the Minister of Labor, I don't want to steal his thunder, I know is making many adjustments. And I want to encourage persons to just listen out within next week. He would have some announcements along those lines, along other lines of the financial services, how to better facilitate them in the Department of Workforce and Labor. So there's a lot of things that he's working on that's going to come out next week that I don't want to steal his thunder, but I want to reassure businesses that we have heard your cry, and we are looking at all those areas.
All right. Premier, we do know that the stimulus plan has been rolled out. Just recently within the headlines, some 500 persons will be receiving their checks by the end of this week. Also, additionally, persons within the region, within the territory, receiving their individual checks. But Premier, if we're really to examine the industry who was truly affected by this pandemic locally, it has to be, without a doubt, the tourism industry. So with that said, is government willing to provide any further assistance to those persons, whether it's businesses or employees, specifically those affected in the tourism industry?
Well, we have been doing that straight through COVID-19. And whatever areas that we can base on our funding, given that COVID-19, none of us in the territory or in any territory, in any country is immune from the effects of COVID-19, whether health or financially, we'll continue to do. We have made sure that through this quarantine areas were the hotels, we were able to use the services of our hoteliers in this respect to keep them going during that COVID-19 era. We were able to use other persons in terms of our taxi operators to be able to transport persons from the airport and to the airport. We also use them in terms of to the quarantine areas, also with the shuttle service. So we continue to use as many people in the tourism industry to do as many services that we can during this COVID-19 era. And even with the COVID-19 ongoing and or reopening on the 1st of December, whatever areas we can do to assist, we are going to do, because we're in this together, and that's just not a cliche. Our action has shown that we are dedicated to that. We're also showing that we're preparing our people for the upcoming tourism season. Just today, we launched the certification program at the HLSCC College as we turn over from the Premier's office and the Tourist Board a check of $100,000 to the HL Stowe Community College to be able to run courses and certify our people in the tourism industry, in all the different areas of the tourism industry, whether it be the hoteliers, the taxi operators, crafts alive, all of them, because walking in COVID-19 is much different than walking pre-COVID-19 era. So we are making sure in this new regular that persons are trained. So we're doing a plethora of things to help the diaspora of the tourism industry to be able not only to be economically viable, but also to be trained and with the experience and knowledge of how to work with COVID-19.
All right. I know you mentioned months ago, Honorable Premier, that we had just about 7 pieces of legislation coming earlier this year. We had that press conference. I remember asking you this question to not only help diversify the economy, but also to generate income. I know initially you mentioned we were coming with gambling and marijuana. So I want to talk about that just for a little bit. Where are we on the gambling and the marijuana bills as we speak?
Well, the gaming was finally assented to. So now we're moving with haste to make sure that we set up the commission and get that going. That was not too long ago, so it was passed in the House a while. With somehow we had to wait for a while for it to be assented to. With that, now we are looking at that as being a very heavy value add to our tourism product. We have had a lot of different investors who want to invest with persons locally to come and do what we term as 5-star hotels, and also to have certain things done with the gaming and betting. So the interest has been very voluminous, to say the least, with the gaming and betting. So we are setting up the commission to deal with that, and also for that to be integrated in the new budget, but to also have certain areas of it done before the end of this year with the commission and different areas set up. The medicinal marijuana that we passed in the House, that is still waiting for us to hear if it's assented to. All the concerns that were raised on that were answered. I can only say that once it is passed, or if it was passed already, we would have already been able to move towards having the 3 months crop, which it takes 3 months for the planting of it, and we have already moved towards over 100 jobs, and we have already moved towards at least a couple millions of dollars in our economy. So we are waiting to get that part of our economy going for when the bill is assented to. There were concerns that the outgoing Attorney General said that all those concerns were already addressed in the bill. So we are going to wait until it's assented to. It has pushed us a little behind with that industry and with the revenue that we would have already been projecting for this year. So when that is assented to, then we'll move with haste to get that done, and many other areas.
Wasn't this medicinal marijuana bill passed all the way back in, I think it was June or early July in the House of Assembly, Premier?
I think your timing is exactly correct.
And is there any constitutional responsibility that mandates that it be assented to within a certain time period? Because I remember when it came to the audit being reviewed in the House of Assembly and then taken to the governor's office, there was a 3-month statutory required period for the governor of the Virgin Islands to respond to that and, of course, present it to cabinet. Does the same rules apply to this?
The same rules does not apply to that. and it's one of the areas in our constitutional review that we'll have to make sure that we strengthen in the best interest of the people of the Virgin Islands, because that is not a responsibility under the Premier and the House of Assembly. So we have to wait until it's assented to.
All right, how do persons in the community that may have an interest or perhaps lots of experience in growing cannabis get involved in the industry, Honorable Premier?
Well, once it's passed, that too will have certain commissions and different things that will be set up to help govern it. And there are certain rules and guidelines. And with that, all those are going to be made known to the public and how it's going to be able to progress, so that persons will know how would the standards that government is looking for and how it will be going about. So we really would need that to pass so that we can answer all those questions by putting all the necessary measures in place that will address it. So those will come very shortly after we, not pass, but assented to, once the bill is assented to.
All right, we do recall as well recently, Minister for the subject, Dr. the Honorable Natalia Whitley, he had said that we identified a prime investor. Are you able to say who this person is and whether he will have a monopoly on the CDB products, or is it a case where local entrepreneurs will be able to sell locally, or whether it's exporting as well, sorry, not locally, but exporting without his involvement?
No, it's going to be a little bit of both. One of the things that we have to recognize is that our biggest market is going to be the export. And we have to make sure that we have someone that will allow us to get into those markets that we need to get into to jumpstart us to do that. And that is what one of the investors was willing to do. We are trying to keep them interested in us until the bill is assented to, because we know it was passed from June. So it's holding back our economy and also putting the economy under strain in an area that it should not have been, because more revenue should have been coming in to the economy from before, if this was assented to. So it's going to be a mixture of both. But all people at the end of the day are the ones who we want to grow in the industry. But we need someone that's already in the industry, especially with the external part, to allow us to get that gateway so that we can be able to export the medicinal marijuana, the correct strain, and also the training to make sure that we grow that specific strain in the correct way. So it's going to be a big area for a lot of our people to get jobs. So we're just waiting for it to be assented to so that we can do great things with it. And persons need not worry, because one of the biggest countries in medicinal marijuana is the UK. So we're not doing nothing that is not known to some of the larger countries. So we're just waiting for it to be assented to so that we can get on with that segment of our economy.
Who is the investor, Honorable Premier?
Well, I wouldn't release the investor's name right now, but when the time comes, we'll let it know. One thing we'll not do is be private in the public. One thing this government has done, despite any chatter if you've heard, we have gone public with everything we have done. We have made sure that we sit with the public even before the COVID-19 era. When we were doing the regularizations of persons that were here for years, we went to the college. We sat there for hours. We heard the people's voices. We did that with the trade and investment. When we were doing that with the consumer protection, we even did that with COVID-19. We will come, we hold press conferences, we do live. We do not block people's views on the live Facebook. We send out a lot of publication that is known as our pretty pictures to some, but we look at it as educating and informing the public. We give email address so persons can email their concerns. We meet with industries. We do so many things. We keep the public more informed than any other government in the history. So I am a little bewildered when I hear people say that we don't. And with that in mind, all I can say is that the investor will be known, is not be a secret, and is a reputable person that has come and helped us to move in this direction with the industry. So it's no different than when we started with all the other industries, the methodology that is being used. The only thing here, we have secured our people's interest better than in the past.
All right, so we touched on marijuana and gambling for a little bit. Can you tell us more about any other revenue streams that are being considered at this time? Sorry, to offset some of the losses we've seen in the tourism and financial services sector?
Well, to offset the losses is to make sure that we come up with more, not only industries, but to make sure that we allow for more entrepreneurship in other areas. One of the areas that we're going to be pushing very hard is to create more entrepreneurs, because the government itself cannot do it all for our economy and should not be doing it. We're trying now to shift the way government does business. We brought, for example, to make it more efficient so that more privately owned local businesses and even some businesses from outside can come in to help to stimulate our economy. One of the biggest issues that we have since taking office and over the years is that it's cumbersome to do business in the British Virgin Islands the way it is being done with government. And to be able to deal with that, we have introduced the e-government legislations. Now we have prorogued the House, so we have to go back and bring those legislations back into place so that they can get the first reading and pass. And those, I've asked my colleagues, because I only have one vote in the House of Assembly, to push those as fast as possible, because those there are going to help free up our economy significantly. In terms of, you don't have to leave Jocelyn Dykes to pay for certain things. You can do that online. You don't have to leave Anegada to pay for certain things. You can do it online, rather than to have to catch a ferry and come and wait for long hours. We are also allowing for more developments to come into the territory. Even through COVID-19, we continue to sign development agreements with partnership with local investors and investors from foreign. So we're working on efficiency in government. We are allowing more development projects by local and foreign investments. And we also are working on new areas in financial services that we honestly feel that's going to be able to boost our financial services even more. And with that in mind, all those other industries that should have been already there to diversify the economy we're doing, whether it be the medicinal marijuana, the gaming and betting legislation. We have other areas that we're going to be bringing forward that I do not want to say now, but we will be bringing them forward with more legislation. And the reason that I don't want to say them, contrary to what some may be saying, is that I've found in the territory, until you're ready to discuss them, don't say them. Because there's an element in our territory now that finds their way to try to kill it before it gets the life. So when those are coming on stream, they will be publicly discussed and the whole public will get to know them. But there's a lot of areas that we're working towards as a government. But efficiency in government is the key for all of them to function, and that's what we're working on.
All right, Honorable Premier, as we prepare to wrap up, I know as it relates to government expenses, payroll happens to be one of the biggest expenses to government. So are we making steps at this point to reduce any of those expenses, now and in the foreseeable future? What are we considering at this point, if any?
When you say payroll, you mean cut payroll? I'm trying to make sure I
government
answer
payroll,
correctly.
because one of the concerns we've heard about, and I guess based on allegations in the community, is that government will be forced to cut back on payroll to ensure that we're able to meet our financial responsibilities. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the first things I tell the financial secretary, and I say it every day, is the last thing we want to do is cut any public officers from the payroll. We want to make sure that we could maintain what we have and get more efficiency, improve government services, continue with our new industries, continue with linkage industries to already existing industries, continue to push our entrepreneurship, and continue to create more avenues so that more persons can have more opportunities for jobs in the territory and to help our economy to continue to grow. So even amid of the COVID-19 era, those are the areas that we continue to push. And that is why we made moves to make sure that we find that new area for our financial services industry to be able to blossom in some other areas that we're working on that will be coming to the public domain very soon. And other areas that we are working on to expand our revenue base, but yet keep our expenditure where it is. One of the problems with government over the years, because it was not just an issue for us now, is that as the revenue increased, we just continue to increase the expenditure. And with it in mind, we never diversified the economy. Most of who you're here speaking now and finding fault with everything the government is doing never diversify the economy. So now we are faced with diversifying our economy in the midst of COVID-19 and in the midst of having to take care of all the projects that were not done since Irma in 2017. So everything that was left lingering has come during our tenure. But we have signed up for this as a government. So we want to make sure that we increase revenue. We create atmosphere that persons will love to invest in the BVI. They will love to do business in the BVI. They love to be in the BVI. They love to live in the BVI. That is why we have moved to our natural branding, which is BVI Love, because that is what the BVI is, about the love of the BVI. And we want to make sure our systems allow persons to say that they truly love the BVI and they want to work and live here in BVI Love. So we're on the road towards doing that. It's not an easy task, but it's one in which that we know with God's help that we're going to get done, and we're going to continue to strive to do so. Listening to the public, also getting their views, going back to the drawing board when we have to go back to the drawing board, and reassess, review, and then continue to move forward.
Excellent. Now, there is a circulating room, and I have to ask you about this, Premier, because it has come to our newsroom many times, and that is the fact that, sorry, not the fact, the rumor that government employees will be forced to retire by 65 to reduce government payroll. Very specifically, that has been said to us as journalists here at 284 Media. I want you to say on air if that is true or not.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say if it's true or not in that vein, because nothing has been given as a policy. We have never discussed that, so I do not know where that one came from. What I would say is that 65 years is the age that is allowed for retirement. So I don't know now if someone is saying hard and fast that must be the area. No one in finance has told me that this is a policy that they're bringing forward. I've not heard that as yet. So I will have to wait and see, because in this country, we have more rumors than facts. But if this is one that is going to be a policy, as Minister of Finance, I will tell the people of the Virgin Islands. As of right now, sitting here, no one has told me that this is a policy. I've heard it just today, just like everyone else. But if it is something that we have to do, I'll tell the public. Right now, I know nothing about it. No one has alerted me about it. I've called about it, and no one knows how it has gotten out there as being something that's already etched in stone.
Like you said, Premier, long on rumors, short on facts. Now, there has been a lot of back and forth between your office and the governor's office regarding the control and funding of our international border security system. And, you know, I'm sure that we must be and should embrace moving forward towards greater and greater self-determination. But persons are questioning if now is the right time to do that, especially considering that we have very limited resources and we're essentially facing a perilous economic reality in the midst of everything that's happening with this coronavirus pandemic. What are your thoughts on that, Honorable Premier?
First of all, I don't have a fight with the governor over the border. That is something that's being purported by some. I want to state clearly, the BVI is in a modern partnership with the United Kingdom. And it's just like being in a marriage. And there are times in a marriage where there are going to be areas that we may not agree in the marriage. But you cannot take that one area and take it to mean that the whole marriage is not working, or there's a feud, or we don't agree on other areas. There are more things that we agree on than what we disagree on. But I do not run the country off of emotions. And that is one of the areas that I know that seems to be the trend. Whatever sounds good, we get out there first, we say it, and then we get going. I brought this book and I put it up already, named The Constitution of the Virgin Islands. It's for a reason. The country is run by laws. And I want to state clearly that in the Constitution, Section 60, especially 62, gives the governor the full authority over defense. And one of the areas in defense that is defined in that area, the interpretation there is very clear. That defense is specifically goes towards if there's an invasion, if there's a terrorist attack, or war on the territory, or even if someone is trying to do something negative to one of the high officials whether the governor or any other elected officials, any other high official, and is beyond the police force range. That is the area that the section of the Constitution states clearly that persons or a few persons read it and glance over it and continue to operate as if that section was not advanced in the 2007 constitutional review. In section 57 of the Constitution, it states clearly about National Security Council. The National Security Council in that section states clearly that the National Security Council shall advise the governor on national security matters, and the governor shall act. And the governor will not act on the advice of the national security if it is found that it's going to prejudice Her Majesty's service or prejudice the overseas territories in areas subject to what I've stated, such as in Section 60. So the Constitution is the foundation of which a premier or any leader must run the country, not emotions, not gossip, not melee, not mischief, not likes, not dislikes. So all we are saying in these areas is, listen, we do agree that these areas need more protection. We do agree on certain areas, but whatever we do, even amidst COVID-19, has to be done in a manner that will promote and be able to advance our people of the Virgin Islands in the sea borders, in the different jobs, in the different training. So we have agreed for certain things to happen. We have certain disagreements with how it will happen. But this is not one in which you're saying that you don't want the UK help, like I've heard, or you don't want this and you don't want that. That is not the point. The point is, and that even is not the issue. The issue is that we need certain assistance for certain time until we get all the resources that we are now not only tendering but seeking competitive quotes for our radar system, different systems that I wouldn't name because it's security. So we are in the middle of getting that, and whatever action is done based on the Constitution is one in which the advancement of our people is crucial. The preamble of our Constitution states that it has to be done according to the aspirations of the people of the Virgin Islands in terms of not only now but in the future towards self-determinant. The reason that that has been put in the Constitution when we do discuss areas like Section 57 of the Constitution or Section 60 of the governor's power in the Constitution or Section 49 that talks about who chairs cabinet when the governor is absent, should it be the premier, and that is what is understood, but even that has met with some concerns. The reason that we continue to do these areas is based on the mandate given to the UK under Section 73 of the UN Charter that says that all colonies must be decolonized within a certain time. And in 2023, the UK has to go and the BVI have to go and state, are we on this road? So it's not a matter of what we are fighting against, it's what we are fighting for that we must go towards. So we are saying that when this is done with the security of our borders, it must be done in a way where our people advance. Anything short of that, then we are not advancing. Every time we get in a jam as a territory, if we have to go for help, then it shows that we are not developing towards the eminent time of self-determination. It doesn't have to happen with the next constitutional review, but what goes into that review and the next review must be leading us down towards that road. And as the leader of this territory, I feel good when I see my children doing better than I was doing because it shows that I developed them correct. And as the UK, I know that they're understanding that what I'm saying is I feel good when we see our people go to school. I feel good when we see our security systems are out there and our customs and immigration and police and they're working and they're all people that we send to school. We give them the degrees. We cannot continue to develop our people and think that's it. It is dealing with us being able to police ourselves. We're working on integrity legislation that got a little behind with COVID-19 and the minister's code and other codes that we're working on and all the legislation because it is very important that we show, not the UK, but show ourselves and prove to ourselves that we can police ourselves, not just with the borders, because people are trying to limit me to that, but with everything we do. And I do that respectfully, and I'll continue to do that as a leader of this territory because that's what I truly believe. Move with a purpose, but take your time.
Absolutely. Well said, Honorable Premier. I cannot let you go without addressing this final question. Now, most recently within the House of Assembly, you mentioned that this current government administration inherited a $30 million debt from the previous administration, of course, under the NDP. Within that was the $1, the famous $1 million, perimeter wall that was led on the past Education Minister Myron Walwyn. So can we speak to that specifically? Because recently, Mr. Walwyn mentioned on social media, it's time for you to put it up or shut up. And very strong words, Honorable Premier. What do you have to say to that?
I said to God be the glory, great things he has done. And this is not the son who has to answer that. That matter was a police investigation before I come in. And any lawyer that's worth his salt knows that if you want questions about that, you go to the police. And that's all I can say about that. I have no personal interest in that. That is not something that I'm about. I'm not going to let anybody draw me into their storm and calamity. I'm going to stay into my camp. And that's all I'm going to say about that. And you could move to the next question because Foy Boy from Western will not be answering that. That's not something for me to answer.
Very respectfully, Honorable Premier. As usual, it is my pleasure, and I want to thank you because I know, especially in these times, very busy. Before this interview, we were speaking about whether you get a day off or not, and you said absolutely not. But we know that that's one of the things that comes with the territory of being the leader of such an amazing jurisdiction. So I want to thank you, Honorable Premier, not only for taking the time to sit with us and discuss these very important issues in our community, but also for leading the charge and leading it with all the strength that you do. So thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for having me. I want to thank the people of the Virgin Islands for their patience. Most of all, I want to thank God because without him, we definitely can't do anything. He has been with us through this COVID-19 as a challenge. And I just want to encourage everyone to continue to keep on as the leader of the territory and even as First District representative. It is a difficult time for any leader anywhere in the world to be leading right now. So you only could pray to God for the guidance and continue to ask persons to continue. Let's band together and let's continue to channel our way through this uncharted waters. We're going to continue the stimulus programs that we're doing. Right now, as I speak, there are about close to 100 more persons that are receiving checks with more even to that 100 to be added before the afternoon is out for the business stimulus. And next week, we will be moving towards the one with the churches and the daycare and the private schools and also the fishermen and farmers. We have continued to do many things to help the people of the Virgin Islands and assist during this COVID-19 era. It is our intention to continue to grow the economy with all the plans that we do have. And I want to thank the media who continue to keep us honest and on our toes in terms of making sure that we do not become a rogue government. But at the same time, we want to make sure we put laws in place to make sure to show the public and the people that we can govern ourselves through integrity legislation, through ministerial code, and through many other areas. So the future for the BVI, despite what we are seeing now, is bright. And I want to say that I know that we are moving to do great things because the more that you do to help people and aspire to put them into their purpose, the heavier the attacks come. So whenever I see those, I know that democracy is at work. And I know that we are doing something good for the people of the Virgin Islands. We want you to bring your views and give them to us because that is what democracy is about, listening to the people and making adjustments where we can. In this case, we're going to do it without compromising the safety and the health of the people of the Virgin Islands. You have done a lot to help us bring down the confirmed positive cases in the Virgin Islands now down to 0. I thank you for adhering to all the protocols, adhering to all of the curfews, and together we'll get this done because we're in this together. So BVI, I love you with BVI love.
BVI love. Thank you so much, Honorable Premier. Viewers, that was the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew A. Foy, speaking to a lot of the issues and concerns that we have, especially within the recent few months. Viewers, my name is Javon Wilson here at 284 Media with a mandate to keep the conversations going. Remember to join us at 6 p.m. for our daily newscast. Until then, have a great afternoon.